Jaya club and mentorship actually about the structure of society and what chanting does and everything else, haven't we? This is actually quite nice, this portrait of Prabhupada. He says, the great mistake of modern civilization is to encroach upon others' property as though it were one's own, and thereby create an unnecessary disturbance of the laws of nature. This is interesting because this is going to relate pretty much to what we're discussing with the Bhagavad Gita as well today, as we're going through the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. And we get up to a couple of verses that relate to this directly, so it all sort of links nicely. So we see that in the world all around us, right? Just got to look at what's going on, in the Middle East, Ukraine. I mean, what's happening there? Somebody's trying to encroach on others' property, as if it's their own, and they want to invade. If it's theirs, This whole thing within human nature is a big problem in the world, right? This causes problems. For what purpose? I mean, what's the point, ultimately, when we really examine it and look at it? What a waste of human life, of human energy, of everything. It's so stupid. The human race is so stupid. They really are, when you look at these things going, yeah, they're a bunch of dimwits, right? I mean, what are they doing? What's the point? What is the point? There isn't one, is there? These laws, the laws of nature, are very strong. No living entity can violate them. Only one who is in Krishna consciousness can easily overcome the stringency of the laws of nature and thus become happy and peaceful in this world. Only those who are Krishna conscious. It's quite a strong statement, right? Only. These people aren't happy, aren't they? Where do we see happiness in the world? Permanent happiness. You may see some temporary relief from suffering, but that's not happiness, right? Nobody's really happy in material life, are they? Not really. Not when we really examine. It's temporarily we may have a little bit of, hey, I've got a new phone, I've got a new car, or I've got rid of that pain or something. But then, tomorrow there'll be another pain. Next day there'll be another pain. Yes? And as we get older, we can testify that's true, right? Every day now one pain goes, another one comes, one goes, something else comes. We're never ever going to be blissful in material life. And these rascals who are causing all the disturbance in the world around us are never going to be happy either. And they're never going to give anybody else any happiness. They're just going to cause misery. Because, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, they are of demoniac consciousness. They have a demoniac consciousness. They want to cause problems. As a state is protected by the Department of Law and Order, so this state of the universe, on which this earth is only an insignificant fragment, is protected by the laws of nature. This is something we as devotees really have to do quite a lot. We have to zoom out to see things in a bigger perspective, not in a microcosm, in a microspective, but we have to really zoom out and see things from a different perspective to really understand what's going on. How small we are, how tiny this earth is in relation to not just this universe, but all the innumerable universes that are being produced by Mahavishnu. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand how the cosmic manifestation takes place. From Mahavishnu, innumerable universes are being generated, not just this one. So we have to zoom out and sort of understand that, how small and insignificant we are, and how even smaller and insignificant Donald Trump is. It's just a little tiny speck of dust in them, it's not an important thing at all. You may think he is, because he's puffed up with his ego. All these people are, I'm picking him out as one example, but there are many. Rascals, what did Prabhupada call them? Rascals. They're just rascals. That's all they are. They're idiots. They're dim. What are they doing? They don't have any intelligence, Or their intelligence is stolen away by Maya, by illusion, So we shouldn't listen to these people. We shouldn't vote them in. We shouldn't follow them. We shouldn't proclaim that they have any good, because they don't, actually. And they are also under the control of the laws of karma and the universe. So all of these things are being enacted, and they're being enacted under a law, which we'll discuss in a bit when we read something from the Bhagavad Gita. But there are laws within the material energy which you can't escape, like gravity. Gravity is a law within the material energy, right? We can't escape gravity in the material sense, okay? Yeah? And it's the same as karma. Karma is a law within the material energy, you can't escape. Whether you believe in it or not is irrelevant. It's a fact, it's the truth. It doesn't matter what we think, what we believe, because remember, we only have tiny little insignificant minds. We think we're the centre of the universe. Believe me, we're not. So we have to obey these laws. We are governed by these laws. Yeah, we may think we're independent, we're not. This material nature is one of the different potencies of God, who is the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This earth, therefore, is the property of God. Yeah? It's not our property. It doesn't belong to us. We're going to die at some point, and I might buy a house or might have a nice car. Is it mine? Ultimately? No. Of course it isn't. It's material energy. It doesn't belong to us. We may think it's ours, we own it, we're the same, it belongs to it. No, it doesn't. When we die, how does it belong to us? No, nothing belongs to us. That's an illusion that we own things, we control things. This is the illusion of Maya, Yoga Maya. Yeah? The earth is therefore the property of God, and we, the living entities, especially the so-called civilized human beings, are claiming this property to be our own, under both an individual and a collective false conception. If you want peace, you have to remove the false conception from your mind and from the world that this false claim of proprietorship by the human race on earth is partly or wholly the cause of all disturbances of peace on earth. Yeah? It's true, isn't it? Does anybody not agree with that?
I absolutely agree with. I've never been in a place where I agree with any belief system more so, as I probably said to you the last time, I've been in. I was born up Catholic, and it's always this, wanting to be involved in insight into these things. Now, the only thing I would say is, I do think that we are connected to God, the universe, and everything. And I can say I've had experiences like that, pushed through, certain mind states, sober and not sober, through my life and travelling and festivals and music that I have, and it's a long life story. To get to where I am, and to get to somewhere peaceful at the moment. But I do believe, we're all part of everything. So I can explain the experience to you, which was totally real, which I believe is all how Christians were saying, because I don't like the terminologies, they seem to restrict people. But I find with the Hare Krishnas, I don't find there's a restrictive, like this for example, is just the most open I've ever felt. To being grown up in Catholic environments and that kind of thing. But no, I think we're all one God. We're one God experiencing ourselves subjectively, inside out. So we're all part of the same person. We are God. We're just one God to the universe, one God to everything, and we're just all bits inside out. But actually, all of us are just the same thing. That's
we're of the same quality. Yeah, same quality.
And with that, we are all times, back to the fold and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's a good vision to have, but how many people actually think like that? Not many, unfortunately, and that's why there's problems in the world, right? Because people don't have that sort of vision. Yeah, which is a spiritual vision, right? Yes, it's a spiritual. It's an understanding of something beyond this material energy. There's something more. Yes. And that's really the starting point of spiritual understanding or spiritual practice. But what is it? That's the point. That's what, and And to understand it, that's what this process is all about, because, you know, we'll be talking a bit from the Bhagavad Gita as we go through, but this chanting, this Hare Krishna, is called the peace formula. I mean, just in regard to this particular conversation, there won't be peace in this world as long as nobody's doing this. You know, that's not going to happen. You know? That's very important to understand, you know. Srila Prabhupada, who came to the West in 1965, when he brought this philosophy, this ancient philosophy that, you know, up till the 1400s had been secret, actually, been kept secret, even, you know, from the rest of the world. But it was felt that now it was really important to reveal this knowledge. This is where it's coming from, this understanding and this potency of actually instilling a realization of this fact, yeah, that we are spiritual beings. Because most religions, as you so rightly said, don't actually have that knowledge or that understanding. They're usually just blind faith. They don't have any real deep philosophy and understanding in most cases. Yeah? So it's very rare that you actually can tap into this knowledge. So we're very fortunate. And we've been given the very simple process of doing that, and that is by chanting this mantra, this transcendental, this spiritual sound vibration. This is what will open up our consciousness to receive this knowledge. Not only from externally, but also from inside as well, internally. Because as we've been discussing on our book clubs and everything else recently, that knowledge is realization. And the book we're reading at the moment is called The Science of Self-Realization. And that's what knowledge is. Yes? Knowing. That's inductive. That knowledge is knowing something. Not analysing something and making a theory out of it and verbally saying we think this is this, and we think that is that, and we think this is it, and this, we think there's a big bang, and we think this and the other and all the other, all this nonsense. You know? It's all theory. That's but they pass it off as knowledge, and everybody is indoctrinated and conditioned and believes that. You know? So, but actually, we're revealing something. Krishna is revealing something far more superior, something much deeper, something much more profound, and something much more sublime. That we are, you know, we will discuss this in a minute about who we are, because real knowledge is understanding that fact, who we are. You know, as I was just saying, when you leave your body, none of this is going to matter ultimately. All this material stuff that we're so in anxiety and stressed about isn't going to matter, because we're not going to be even here to, you know, be involved in it. So ultimately, we're wasting our time worrying about all that stuff. Yeah, in a way, or trying not getting involved in it to some degree, right? Yeah? Yeah, it's a waste of time. So we should be focusing our energy on something much higher. And that is what you were just saying with this whole concept. That's what we should be focusing on. But it also will bring peace to us. Initially, chanting is especially important. We're just trying to really discussing the chanting Hare Krishna, which is what we've just been doing. And we should try and do this as much as possible, as often as possible, and associate with others who are doing it as much as possible. That's very important, extremely important. And that's a miracle, actually, being given access to that association and that process, because, you know, it's a miraculous thing. Because just imagine how many of the population of the world are able to do that. It's very rare. So we're very fortunate to have access to that process, to that knowledge, and to the bliss and ecstasy that comes with that process. Yeah? Because it's transcendental, and spiritual pleasure. I mean, everybody's looking for pleasure. As we were reading from the George Harrison thing the other day in Chant to Be Happy, where he said that everybody's looking for Krishna, because everybody's looking for happiness. Yeah? But everybody's looking for happiness in the wrong place, because they don't know where it is. But Krishna is the source of happiness. So we're plugging into the source of pleasure. So that pleasure, as with all spiritual activity, increases and increases and increases. Yeah? Whereas material things may give you pleasure when you first encounter it, but after a while it decreases and decreases and decreases. That's the difference between spiritual pleasure and material pleasure. Yeah? It's true, isn't it? Everything in the world. No matter where you get happiness or pleasure from, that will decrease. So chanting Hare Krishna, as we've just been doing, and as it said there, is not only the most important thing we can do, for ourselves, it's the most important thing for the whole planet as well. Yeah? While we're here, in the short amount of time we have here, we should try and help to encourage others to do it as well. Because otherwise they're going to keep on suffering, as we're going to hear about in a minute when we read our Bhagavad Gita verse, because that's what this relates to. So that's just a little thing about chanting, because this is the key to it all. Chanting is the most important thing about this whole process. Chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. Chant and be happy. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada was very insistent about that. That, Lord Chaitanya and Krishna have made it very easy for us to achieve the highest spiritual realization, the highest state of super consciousness, by making it very simple, by giving us this chanting to do. 3 words, that's all you have to do. He couldn't make it any simpler. Because, like majority of the human race, are all a bit dim in Kali Yuga. Not quite as dim as these rascals who are, throwing, these like cavemen who are throwing stones at each other and calling them bombs and thinking it's advancement. No, it's not. It's not. Maybe technological better, but it's no different to a caveman throwing another stone on another caveman, is it? Where's the advancement? Yeah? Where's the intelligence? No, it's not. So we're all in Kali Yuga a little bit, we have problems understanding higher levels of things like this, but through this process we can. So we're very fortunate in that regard that we've got access to this. So don't neglect it, take it and use it all the time, and we will develop a much higher state of consciousness and experience a much nicer pleasure. And we'll encourage and have peace within ourselves, and we'll have peace around our world as well. Like we said the other day at the meeting, I think that Srila Prabhupada said once that if everybody did what I asked them to do straight away, and we could have change the world in a month, the world could change completely. Yeah? It could become nirvana, it could become Vaikuntha. No anxiety. We were reading on the mentorship group about the effects of chanting the other day. One of the effects of chanting is that you will have no anxiety. How many people are suffering from mental health issues in this world now? But that will have no anxiety if you chant. All these things can be cured just by this mantra. We don't need, barbiturates or whatever drugs they give out for, depression and whatever it might be these days. It's just a business, just money makers. Dim on it, really. Don't need it. But they're not educating people like that. No. Where is this education that's going to make people happy? It's not there in our society. So anyway, we have to try and help people to understand that. Okay, so we'll do Radha Madhava. You got that one? Wow, you're on the ball. I like the technology here.
If I can find.
Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopi Janwala Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, I believe we're up to verse 21 in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. Those of you who don't know, we're reading all right through the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish. We're on chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita now. You know the Bhagavad Gita?
So last time I said I've got, I think it's version 4 though, so I was asking.
All right, okay.
Version to start with. I'll find it's good. Yeah.
Okay, right, that's...
I've got ADHD, so.
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita, just as you know, is the source book of all this knowledge. Yeah. Everything you know or hear about yoga or karma or all these things, it all comes from this originally. This is the source of this knowledge. It is spoken by Krishna to his disciple and friend and is Arjuna on the battlefield. Funnily enough, we were talking about battles, wars and stuff just now. But there is a difference between those wars, which aren't really wars actually, they're just, not really wars, they're just invasions, stupidity. These wars is a different thing, a totally different thing. So Krishna is talking, we are on chapter 2, verse 21. Veda vinashinam nityam. If you can repeat them, if you can. Yeah. Veda vinashinam nityam.
Vedanasinam nityam.
Ya inam ajam avyayam. Katam saparushaha pataha. Kam gatayavati hantikam. Vedavina shinam nityam. Ya inam ajam avyayam. Katam saparushaha pataha. Kam gatayati hantikam. You all sound like Vedic Sanskrit scholars. I'm very impressed. Sanskrit is a very nice, with a beautiful, elegant, spiritual language. There's so much meaning and depth. It's lovely to try and learn some of these things, at least to try and pronounce some of these things nicely. That was very good. I was impressed. Thank you. Translation. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? We were discussing how chapter 2 is Krishna is teaching Arjuna the fundamentals of spiritual knowledge. We are not this body. We are not this. This isn't us. Yes, this body, as we discussed last week, is made up of atoms. Like this microphone stand or this microphone or anything else around us that's made of material energy, everything is made of atoms, right? Yes? Our bodies are also made of atoms, yes? But there is a difference between that speaker and me, isn't there? Even though we're both made of the same stuff, yeah? Consciousness. There is something within this bunch of atoms which is different to the form that's been made into that bunch of atoms inhabits, right? Yeah? I know my voice is in there, but that's just doesn't mean there's somebody in there. Even though if we really go deeply into the philosophy, there is actually someone within each atom, but that's a bit higher knowledge, a bit deeper. So we're different, right? Our bunch of atoms is inhabited by the soul. And we discussed that last week. This soul, me, I, is eternal, unborn, never dies. Krishna says that, in the last verse. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all the kings and all the people on this battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. Even though they're going to get killed in this battle, it's only the body that is getting killed, not the person. The soul carries on. So, Arjuna is not wanting to engage in this battle, which is, crucial to the balance of the world, to stop the evil from taking over. It has to happen. And the world is like that. There has to be wars. That has to happen. But not like we're seeing now. They're not proper wars. The kings would be fighting on the battlefield in these wars. Not hiding away somewhere and dropping bombs on something. That wouldn't be happening. So how can a person who knows that even think that he's going to kill someone? Because Arjuna was saying, I don't want to kill my relative people on the other side. So if he's in knowledge, he would. That's a different. He would not. He should understand that on a spiritual level. Yeah, that he's not going to kill anybody. So that's the basic, core understanding of spiritual knowledge. That we are eternal beings. We are not going to die when our body dies. That's not going to happen, nor is any other living entity. Yeah? The important thing is what we do with the time that we have allotted in this particular body. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence has a utility. Now, this is where we get into an area which may be a bit of a red flag for some. You know? As we read through the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are certain things which some people in modern society may find a little bit of a red flag, or may not agree with the Vedic culture, but we have to really investigate and discuss why that might be. And this is one of them, and I know that I've had this discussion with people in the past about this particular subject matter, and it can be a sensitive one for some people to understand. So, violence can be useful and has to be useful in one sense. Similarly, violence has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, I mean, we don't get that in this country now, we used to. The justice of the peace cannot be blamed. So if in a case of, let's go back some years when capital punishment was prevalent, and a person had committed a bad crime and killed someone, murdered someone, and he got convicted and was killed. Yeah? The person who was giving the sentence in that regard, due to the law, is not guilty of killing, right? It's not his. You understand? So he's not guilty because he's just carrying out the law. Yes. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So he can't be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice, right? Yeah? So he's not guilty of anything. Even though he's killed, he's not guilty of murder, even though he's convicted someone to die because of a crime that they've committed, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah. In the Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death, so that in his next life he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. So actually that is a mercy doing that, because we have to understand, going back to the original thing we were talking about earlier, there is a law within the material energy called karma. Yes? So if somebody kills somebody, they're going to get killed at some point by that person. That's action and reaction, right? Yeah? Yeah? So if the law, the government, or the court, or whatever, the higher authority, does that for that crime, that person's karma is then negated, and he won't have to go through the suffering that he's. So actually, it's a mercy. Yes, if you think about it. Yeah, in Vedic culture, that's the law. But of course, these things never happened in Vedic culture. That's the point. It's very, very rare that you would get somebody murdering someone else. We wouldn't even murder animals, or kill animals for food or anything. There would be no killing. So actually it's very unusual that would happen. But if it did, that would be the result, right? Yeah, does everybody understand it? So in our society, in our more liberal, liberated, think they are, liberated society, actually we don't do that now, do we? But is it good or is it bad? I'm not going to make a judgment or say anything about that, because that could be a very sensitive subject in our society. But in Vedic culture, that would be the system, yeah? So actually it's merciful to take people out of their possible suffering, isn't it? That's being kind and compassionate, ultimately, when you think about it. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, as he's doing on this battlefield now, the Kurukshetra, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice and that Arjuna should follow his instructions. Knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because, at any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So, for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, so there is no possibility of any sinful reaction. So, something to meditate on. Quite a deep subject, actually, but very, very crucial to understand, yeah, because it relates very, very, in a way, to our own situation, because it all ties in with karma, and karma, as we were discussing earlier, is a law within the material energy. For every bad action we perform, we're going to get a bad result. And vice versa, if we perform a good action, we get a good result. Yeah? So it behooves us to at least do good actions, yeah? And not bad ones, because we're going to suffer for that. Now ultimately, as we're Vaishnavas, or trying to be Vaishnavas, or devotees, our activities are actually transcendental to karma, which is also extremely rare and extremely important to understand. So we do everything for Krishna, right? So our karma is taken away, it's negated. Our lifestyle is karma-less, actually. We don't have to suffer the karmic reactions of our actions if we do everything as our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, has told us to do. Yeah? So we will, at the end of this life, get out of this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and taking other births if we follow his instructions. Yeah? But we have to follow the instructions. If we don't, we'll still receive that karmic reaction. Actually, being devotees, our karma is reduced quite a lot anyway, initially. As soon as you become a devotee, Krishna then reduces your karmic reactions. Not only do we help ourselves, but we also help all those around us. We were sad to hear of Prema's mother passing away the other day. But you know, as Prema is a devotee, his mother is going to become liberated because of his actions. So ultimately, becoming a devotee, everybody benefits. Yeah? And it's stated in the scriptures, it's stated by Srila Prabhupada, it's stated that, you know, if you become a devotee, not only will you become liberated, but you liberate 7 or 8 generations before you and after you. I mean, you know, it's the ultimate compassionate thing to do. You know? From this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and these karmic reactions. So it's very important. It's an important verse to understand, but it can be quite a difficult one to understand for people who are relating to the person being the body. Yes? Does that make sense? Because we understand that people are not the body, we should know we're the soul and we're eternal, we should understand that this thing isn't so difficult to understand. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? Does anybody disagree with that or have any issues with that? Not what I'm advocating we go off and, you know, ask the government to bring back capital punishment, but I mean, but in a spiritual sense, that's, you know.
It makes perfect sense. I completely understand
It does.
I understand if people will be argumentative, they can switch it and turn it into their own, you know, something that suits them. But I think as a devotee, it's quite simple to understand.
Yeah, it's compassionate. It's compassionate actually to do that ultimately, although it seems very sort of strange to do that in a material sense, you know. So it's just opening up your mind to a bigger picture, pulling out a little bit, you know, like we were saying, sometimes we have to zoom out, see things from a different perspective. Yeah?
I've read somewhere winning the war is not killing the enemy.
Yeah. That's, I guess,
how is it possible in the current world is a big question.
Yeah.
Changing the minds.
Absolutely. So, we'll we can read the next verse. Text 22, so everybody's okay with that one? Yeah. This one is again a very, very important verse in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll just read the Sanskrit, the verse very quickly because we don't have so much time. Vasamsi jirani yataha vihaya navani garinati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jimani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Change of the body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of body, which appear from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, And again, from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This is already been explained in a previous verse, 2:13. Yes, we've already discussed that. Now, this is very fundamental because we were discussing this the other day at the mentorship meeting, I think, and I'd been watching a conversation between Bhakti Vikash Swami and somebody else the other day, and he made a very, very important point which relates to this, and that is that any subject matter, anything we learn in this world, either spiritually or materially, if the beginning point is wrong, everything else is wrong. So if you study mathematics and the person who's teaching you, or the mathematical formula is 1 and 1 makes 3, immediately everything else is going to be wrong from that starting point. Yes? Yeah? And that will apply to anything. And it's the same with spiritual knowledge. If people who are religious or spiritual or anything don't understand this point, the very fundamental basic thing about spirituality, that we are not the body, that we are the soul, and reincarnate, and reincarnation is a fact, it's not an idea. If they don't understand that first starting point, then everything about their spiritual practice, their realization, their religious practice will be wrong. Yeah? Because this is the most important thing we have to understand from this process. And if they don't know that, they will not be able to understand spirituality in reality. Yeah? Because they're starting from a point that is not correct. Yeah? Like the mathematician, if he starts from a point that 1 and 1 is 3, everything else will be off and out. Yeah? So we have to understand this is a very basic fundamental thing, that we are spiritual beings, that we do reincarnate, that we are eternal. Yeah? The body is temporary and we are eternal. If you don't understand or have a realization of this very basic fact, everything else can be wrong. Yeah? Makes sense? So this Bhagavad Gita explains that here. Yeah? No, I don't think any other scripture explains that. I believe I did read somewhere that the Bible did have sections about reincarnation that were taken out some hundreds of years ago. It's been changed. Why they took it out, I'm not sure. They must have had reasons. It's got something to do with control, I imagine. But all these things were there originally in the Bible. I think, is that you've heard about that? It's true, isn't it? It's been in Constantinople or something, King Constantine, wasn't it? They changed the subject. They took great big sections of the Bible out, stuff that's related to this sort of stuff. So,
if you believe in reincarnation.
Sorry?
Would they me if you believe in reincarnation?
No, of course you wouldn't. No. So anyway, this is the basic fundamental fact, and it's the starting point for our spiritual life. Once we have understanding of this point, realization of this, then it starts to expand real knowledge. Prabhupada always said that. When somebody, what is real knowledge? Real knowledge is understanding you're not the body, that you're the soul. From then you can expand your knowledge correctly. If you don't have that fundamental realization, understanding, everything else that comes after will be wrong. Very important point to understand. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. The supersoul is Paramatma, is Krishna. The supersoul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad, as well as the Svetashvatara Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, that's us, is eating the fruit of the tree, material pleasure, trying to get pleasure in the material world. The other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Or of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, as we were just discussing earlier, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul, us, is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another, or from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntarily surrendering to Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mundaka Upanishad and Svetashvatara Upanishad confirm this. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness because he is relating to the material world, than as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. No anxiety. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. Arjuna is us, right? Also. So we have to remember it's not just Arjuna who's turning his face to Krishna, that's what we're doing as well. Yeah? So we don't want to suffer, do we, anymore? We're looking for happiness, aren't we? We see what a nonsense is with the material world is, right? Yeah? And we have to much more savour and enjoy the association of devotees, right? And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher, who he has to fight in this battle. He should rather be happy to kill them, or their bodies, in the righteous fight, so they may be cleansed of all the reactions of their various bodily activities. They're going to be liberated from this material bondage, from this cycle of birth, death, old age and disease, from this suffering. They're going to be liberated from that because of this situation. So that's got to be a happy thing, really. You know, we often see that. I mean, when I know people like my mother, for example, when she was leaving her body, she was very, very ill, very, very emaciated, in a lot of pain. You know, and you're praying for her release from that, aren't you? You know, you want to come, and she did as well. I want to get out of this now. I've had enough of this material, you know. And so it's a liberation. It's actually a good thing, right? But we tend to, with material vision, we tend to view it as a bad thing. No, it's actually a good thing. It's a release from suffering. If we know what we're going to be doing next, when we're out of the body, you know. So that's where we have to be careful and not incur any bad karma and come back in a body where we're going to suffer again. Yeah? We don't want that, do we? And we don't want others to go through that. So this whole process is very liberating for everybody, even though it appears on the surface that poor Arjuna's got to kill his relatives. You know, we're not going to be in that situation. This is a heavy situation. It won't happen to us, but it's teaching us a very, very important lesson. One who has laid down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there is no cause for Arjuna's lamentation. So a very important couple of verses in relation to the process of Krishna consciousness and understanding spiritual knowledge. Very basic in one sense, because as we were saying, this is really the starting point of understanding. Then everything starts to expand from that point. So, okay, so any questions or comments or contradictions or corrections or realizations or not realizations? Or
I can't say what they are, but I know there's certain Muslim sects that believe in reincarnation, isn't there?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I've already studied.
There's a TV program on it, but I can't remember that much. But I know there's certain sects.
Yeah.
Because this guy was remembering his past life.
Oh right. Yeah. I mean, it's a fact. It's a fact. I mean, it's an opposite. It's not like some sort of occulty sort of thing. I mean, it's speculation. It's reality. It's a reality. It's real. This is what happens. We actually, scientists will even agree that when we're in these bodies, our body changes every 7 years completely, right? Everything, all the cells, all the molecules, whatever it might be, the structure of the body, every 7 years changes. So in this body, we're going through different bodies anyway. Yeah? Every 7 years, the whole thing is different. So reincarnation is going on constantly anyway. We're all going through it, but we don't change. We stay the same. Yeah? I had a different body when I was a little toddler. I've got a different older body now, but I'm still the same. But the body has changed, so I've reincarnated. So it's going on anyway. So it is a fact. It can't be denied. And there are so many examples and so many studies and so many cases where it becomes, irrefutable. It's true. But if we don't know this, we don't understand this, and don't have realization of this, then our spiritual life will go off on all sorts of odd tangents. We won't, we can speculate and believe this, and I believe that, and I think this, and I think that, and all the rest of it. We can do that forever. Never come to a conclusion or a realization. Okay. So we're going to do Samadhi. So thank you very much for your patience and your tolerance listening to me. And Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and to Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Always wanting sense gratification. Always want sense gratification. Thank you very much. We'll do this one, then we'll make the shadow. Transcendental choir. Okay.
You're just leading and we are just following.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Have got any announcements? Do you know any announcements going on?
Yes, we got next week Harinam
Next week we have Harinam. So
at 6 o'clock, so please join.
if you can get here early, next week, 6 o'clock, we go chanting up the high street, annoying all of the meat-eating Muslims.
Yes. And Saturday we have Graves and Sangha on the temple.
Last Saturday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, last Saturday, so if you can join that one.
That's at 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock?
3 o'clock, I think.
3 to 5. 3 to 5.
3 to 5. That's at the Hindu
Temple in
temple
Graves
in Graves.
and
Quite close to the big car park.
yeah, there's a big car park just opposite.
2 hours free.
Yes, and
Alright, okay.
Sunday we have a Rat Navami in a Dutch place. I think 1 to
Oh, that's next week.
o'clock.
That'd be very nice. So that's a
On
little round
Sunday.
appearance day.
And we have special guest.
Yeah, we have a special guest for that.
Coming on Friday and also on Sunday.
And on Friday, next Friday, we have Navadeep Chandra coming from South London Temple. He's very nice to go to. He's been here before.
Yeah.
He's very nice.
Clean the carts.
Yeah, he's very good. Very nice to go. He's very, very knowledgeable. Very so we look forward to seeing him here again. So thank you very much. If you can get to any of them, especially on the Radhanath's farm, Dad's farm around there, they'll be very nice and well. It's a appearance day. It's a very nice festival. Okay, so time for prasadam.
Whole weekend in a spirituality.
That's right, yeah. Blissed out. We've blissed out the weekend. Okay, Namaha Prasade Govinde. Namaha Vaishve. Salva Punya Tamarajan. Vishnu Saranaya Jayate. Sarirana Vinja. Vedryataika. Vivekale Tishai Shakale. Dharma Divayati. Logamaya Sudamati. Takiktaktina Samsare. Krishna Bodadoyamoy. Parivara Jiva Joy. Svaprasada Delobai. Sainamarita Pao. Radha Krishna Gunagal. Premadago Shri Chaitanya Nitai. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara. Shri Vasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mahaprasadam ki jai. Thank you very much. Please take some